whether the statutory removal protections for members of the FTC violate the separation of powers. Yes, they do. And if so, if whether Humphrey's executor should be overruled. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now.
We are not going to tolerate gaslighting from anyone in the media or from anyone on the other side who is trying to say that it's the president who is weaponizing the DOJ. It was Joe Biden and his attorney general who weaponized the DOJ.
Major victory out of the Supreme Court of the United States. It involves this woman called Rebecca Slaughter, who now is going to be fired. She had been fired by the president a long time ago. And of course, a federal judge came out and said, you can't fire her. What do you think you are, the president of the country? You think you run the executive branch? She works at the FTC. Oh, what's the FTC? It's an independent body, and you can only fire somebody for cause if you check these boxes, because Congress doesn't want to manage anything, and they don't want the executive to have to manage anything either. So they create these pseudo entities that nobody can touch until Trump came in, starts firing everybody. They all sue, and he's been winning and winning and winning, as we've covered here. But this is a big one, because this is about the FTC, and the FTC is a case that was implicated in Humphrey's executor back in 1935 that has been the law for the last however many years, 90 years. And now it is going to probably be reversed, as we're going to see. We're not there yet. This is just the initial stage here. What the Supreme Court did in this very short opinion is a good indicator of where this is going. So here's the background on Humphrey's executor. So it's a 1935 decision, and the Supreme Court back then, during this weird time in American history, we're like, you know what? Let's tax ourselves with income tax. You know what else we need to do? Create the Federal Reserve and all these things. You know, kind of in that era, and then we get working up into the FDR era, so like going through this like socialist era, and they're creating all these entities. Now, this was a 1935 decision, and you can see it's a decision by the Supreme Court, and it says that Congress can limit the ability of the president to fire certain people. So where is that person tucked in the org chart of the federal government? We don't really know. The president's not the ultimate boss because he doesn't have unilateral authority to fire them. Here's what the case said. This case was William Humphrey. He was appointed to the FTC, which is just what Rebecca Slaughter was at, which is why this case is on point, whom FDR had fired. Roosevelt fired Humphreys over their policy disagreements, and Humphreys got criticism. It went up to the Supreme Court, and they said that you can only fire this person for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. Okay, so not for cause. So if that's true, then who is ultimately in charge of that person? So we got Calvin Coolidge, we got Roosevelt, and the decision came down 9-0 back in 1935. The court said it was not constitutional. The president cannot fire this person because the Congress limited it. The opinion gave 4 main reasons. It said Congress created this, and they created this stupid little framework. They're like, well, Congress meant and wanted this commission to be independent and nonpartisan. Okay, which it never is. Those were just kind of fake names, fake labels that they apply to totally partisan entities. The opinion described the FTC as an agency that was supposed to be free from control by the president, right? Just like the Federal Reserve is and all these other agencies that are also fake. And the executive branch, except the initial appointments. And they said, these people are experts. It's like a body of experts, just like the Federal Reserve. And so they should be insulated from politics. Okay, well, what branch do they live in? And they also said that their functions were not actually political or executive. So they made this up, right? They call it quasi-judicial and quasi-legislative. Like, what are you talking about, you weirdos? We've got 3 branches, okay? That's it, and that's all. There is no quasi-pseudo things that exist between the two because we're supposed to be checking and balancing each other. So if we're too intermingled, then we're not actually separate. Well, it's quasi-judicial and it's quasi-legislative. Okay, where does it have to function from? Only one branch, the executive. That's why the executive has control. So this case has been on the books for a long time, and now the Supreme Court is hinting that they're going to reverse it, which is going to be great because the executive branch governs the execution of the law, okay? Not these third-party entities that Congress has created to serve them. So here is what the decision says. All of that background to show now we're at the Supreme Court of the United States. The application for the stay that went over to John Roberts is granted. So remember, Rebecca is fired. She turns around and sues. The judge says, yeah, you can't fire her. Humphrey's executor says, you only have to fire them for cause, blah, blah, blah. And you are now injuncted to shove her back into your position of power, even though the president of the United States doesn't want her in there. So she's now back. Now they're asking for a stay of the order that would put her back so that she can remain fired. So they're asking for a stay of the lower level ruling, and that has been granted. So she's fired. Again, the July order of the district court is stayed because it was a terrible decision. The application is also treated as a petition for a writ of cert, and the petition is granted. So we're going to hear this this case, and we're going to reverse Humphrey's executor, probably. The parties are directed to brief and argue the following questions for us. 1. Whether the statutory removal protections for members of the FTC violate the separation of powers. Yes, they do. And if so, whether Humphrey's executor should be overruled. Oh gosh, so great. The answer is yes to those both, Chief Justice. Whether a federal court may prevent a person's removal. Question number 2, either through relief at equity or at law. The clerk is directed to establish a briefing schedule that will allow this case to be argued in the December 2025 argument session, so coming up soon. And the stay shall terminate as soon as we have a judgment from the Supreme Court. That's, I think, basically intimating that they are going to overrule Humphrey's executor. Now, the usual suspects, 3 of them, Kagan, the Libs, Sotomayor, and Jackson, of course, they're all dissenting. And here's what they say, which is ridiculous. On top of granting cert before a judgment, the court today issues a stay, enabling Trump to immediately discharge without any cause a member of the FTC, which is his power. That stay, says the dissent, granted on our emergency docket is just the latest in a series, says Kagan. She says, earlier this year, the same majority by the same mechanism permitted the president to fire these other people. Remember? The NLRB, fired, get out. The Merit Systems Protection Board, fired, get out. Consumer Product Safety Commission. And I have so much disdain for these because these are the bureaucratic cancers that just fetter our entire government. They're all over the place. What are they? What do? They got all these people who are appointed who are just bureaucrats. Now, Congress, writes Kagan, as everyone agrees, nobody agrees with you guys. 6 people disagree with you. As everyone agrees, what? You're in the dissent. Not everybody agrees, obviously. Prohibited each of those presidential removals. See U.S. Code and other things, and see these other relevant statutes, and see my other dissent, says Kagan, where I was also in the minority. Yet the majority, stay order by stay order, has handed full control of all of those agencies to the president. She's shocked. Well, yeah, because he's, the president, Elena. He may now remove, so says the majority, though Congress said differently, any member he wishes for any reason and no reason at all. Yeah, that's called the separation of powers. And if they don't like the removals, then they can impeach him or pass a constitutional amendment to create these bodies in some 4th branch of government. And he may thereby extinguish the agency's bipartisanship and independence, which were fake anyways. Now, I dissented from the majority's prior stay orders, and today I do so again, right? Trump can't fire anybody. Under existing law, what Congress said goes. No, not if it's unconstitutional, Judge. That's not how it works. They're not the president. What Congress said goes. No, it's not. Oh my gosh. She's like illiterate. As this court unanimously decided nearly a century ago. In Humphreys, right, she says, she's going back to Humphreys, they're going to overrule it. That's what they're asking about. We rejected a claim of presidential prerogative identical to this one. Yeah, they said, well, and Roosevelt wanted to fire this dude. He didn't like the policies. Roosevelt had the power to do it. But the courts at that time said no. Congress, we held, may restrict the president's power to remove members if you guys held this. And the whole point, it's like, okay, this is very circular because the question is whether we need to overrule that. And you're saying, Kagan, in your dissent, let me give you the authority, which is the case that we're talking about overruling. We're like, okay, thank you for referencing that. So the president cannot, as he did here, fire an FTC commissioner. So to reach a different result requires reversing the rule stated in Humphreys, which is why we're here. She's missing the entire point. It entails overriding rather than accepting Congress's judgment about an agency design. Now, the majority may be raring to take action, as its grant of certiorari before judgment suggests. Yeah, because the president is not in control, right? If the president can't fire these people because lower level district judges, I don't know if they're sorority sisters like the other ones, but are usurping the executive authority from them. And the Supreme Court is not appreciating that because it's happening over and over and over again. And they're all referencing Humphreys, which is now hopefully going bye-bye. Because the majority stay does that, I dissent. Our emergency docket should never have been used like this. So it's just a procedural objection. They bring it up all the time. And to be fair, the right does it too when Biden's in charge, but we had more judges. So anyways, so that's what's happening. Congress is fully capable of impeaching the president. Should it not be used, the president can shape government authority and to reshape the nation's separation of powers. No. We're just enforcing the separation of powers that already exist. So nice decision from the Supreme Court, not final, but we're going to have briefing. We're going to get a final ruling. And what it feels like is Humphrey's executor is on the way out, which is good news because it enabled all of these other pseudo branches of government and ultimately enabled the Federal Reserve. They just went hog wild. And Humphreys was, a challenge to that, but the Federal Reserve was created even before that in 1913. So it was a weird era in American history where we decided to tax ourselves for whatever stupid reason. But we also see Pam Bondi is celebrating the decision. Says our attorneys at the Justice Department just secured a significant Supreme Court victory, protecting President Trump's executive authority. And to be clear, clear. This is going to be used aggressively the other way. So the next president that comes in, they're nuking everybody. In a 6-3 decision, I mean, unless it's, Vance or whatever, but if Democrats ever take charge, they'll nuke everybody. In a 6-3 decision, the court stayed a lower court ruling which prevented the president from firing a member of the board, which is under the executive branch. This helps affirm our argument that the president, not a lower court judge, has hiring and firing power over executive officials, and they don't live in this little pseudo branch. Quasi-legislative, quasi-judicial. It's made up. We will continue fighting and winning in court to defend President Trump's agenda. Thank you, Pam Bondi, for that. Now, Pam had a nice victory, but Pam also got into a little bit of an awkward situation over here. President Trump posted maybe a secret message on his Truth Social. Was this supposed to go to Pam and he accidentally sent it on Truth? Or did he send it to Pam and thought, this is so good, I'm going to post it on Truth? Here's what he said. Pam, I have reviewed over 30 statements and posts saying that essentially, same old story as last time. All talk, no action. Nothing is being done. What about Comey, Adam, Shifty Schiff, Letitia? They're all guilty as hell, but nothing is going to be done. Quote, then we almost put in a Democrat-supported U.S. attorney in Virginia with a really bad Republican past, a woke rhino who was never going to do the job. That's why 2 of the worst Dem senators pushed him so hard. He even lied to the media and said he quit and that we had no case. No, I fired him. And there is a great case, and many lawyers and legal pundits say so. Lindsay Halligan is a really good lawyer, Pam, and likes you a lot. We can't delay any longer. It's killing our reputation and credibility. They impeached me twice and indicted me 5 times over nothing. Justice must be served now. 3 exclamation points. President DJT. Pam's like, oh, damn. She just got that. Got that at 3:44 p.m. September 20th. Goes, oh, what do I do? Then President Trump issued another response right after that. An hour later says, Pam Bondi is doing a great job as Attorney General of the United States. Says she is very careful, very smart, loves our country, but needs a tough prosecutor in the Eastern District of Virginia. Like my recommendation, Lindsay Halligan, who he knew was one of Trump's attorneys preceding, to get things moving. What we don't need is a Democrat-endorsed Republican. I will be nominating Lindsay Halligan to be the U.S. attorney in this very important part of our great country. She will be fair, smart, and will provide desperately needed justice for all. So hopefully Pam got the memo and is driving this bus to where it needs to go. Truth post from the president appointing Lindsay. It is my honor to appoint Lindsay Halligan, who has been serving as the special assistant to the president at the White House, the U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. He says, Lindsay's a tough and smart and loyal attorney who has worked with me for a long time, including in the winning fight against the weaponization of our justice system by the crooked Joe Biden and the radical left Democrats, which she witnessed firsthand when she stood up for my rights during the unconstitutional and un-American raid on my home in Mar-a-Lago, where they sent in armed FBI agents with an approved use of force policy that included kill in Palm Beach, Florida, raiding Trump's room, going into Melania's closet in Barron's closet, rummaging through her. As partner at the biggest law firm in Florida, Lindsay proved herself to be a tremendous trial lawyer and later represented me and won in the disgraceful Democrat documents hoax, as well as many other major high-profile cases. She is extremely intelligent, fearless, and working with Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche. Together, they'll have the strength and the determination to absolutely be outstanding in this new and very important role. Congratulations, Lindsay. You will do great things for justice, Virginia, and our country. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. From President Trump. And so there's been questions about this. Trump fired a public servant, a U.S. attorney, asked for his resignation, all these things. Like, they throw a hissy fit when Republicans fire people, but not when their side fires people, right? They come in and all U.S. attorneys got to go. They nuke everybody. So Trump's doing the same. And this guy asks Caroline a question and she handles it.
Back to the president's social media post from over the weekend regarding the DOJ and his seeming frustration that they hadn't taken action quickly enough. I want to point to something that the president said during his inaugural address. Never again will the immense power of the state be weaponized to persecute political opponents. We will not allow that to happen. Is the president going back on his promise?
No. In fact, the president is fulfilling his promise to restore a Department of Justice that demands accountability. And it is not weaponizing the Department of Justice to demand accountability for those who weaponize the Department of Justice. And nobody knows what that looks like more than President Trump. We are not going to tolerate gaslighting from anyone in the media or from anyone on the other side who is trying to say that it's the president who is weaponizing the DOJ. It was Joe Biden and his attorney general who weaponized the DOJ. Joe Biden used this sacred American institution to go after his political opponent in the middle of an election year. And you look at people like Adam Schiff and like James Comey and like Letitia James, who the president is rightfully frustrated. He wants accountability for these corrupt fraudsters who abused their power, who abused their oath of office to target the former president and then candidate for the highest office in the land. And I think the president is reaffirmed in those frustrations and his hope for accountability by the millions and millions of people who reelected him to this office with a mandate to demand accountability. And the president has not been shy about this, Gabe. In fact, when he traveled to the Department of Justice earlier this year, all of you were there to cover it. He said, quote, "I demand a full and complete accountability for wrongs and abuses that have occurred. The American people gave a mandate to investigate and root the corruption out of our system." And that's what the president wants to see.
That's exactly right. And they indicted him, remember, 4 times in various locations and unleashed hell with FBI agents like Timothy Thibault, who gave the entire case over to Jack Smith. They were making up Russia collusion hoaxes. They were having secret meetings to ensnare the Trump administration at the highest levels: Obama, Brennan, Comey, Clapper, and all of them. We see it in the messages. But now, when the American people were able to hear their claims, we saw a lot of this litigated in the media for 4 years. We heard him say, a 34 felon, he's an abuser because of E. Jean Carroll and all the things over and over and over again. We still voted and we still got him in, right? And part of the reason that Trump won is because of the weaponization. People were sick of it. We're tired of seeing them try to throw him off the ballot and then lecture us about democracy. They threw him off the internet and then scolded us for being upset about it. Well, maybe if you guys didn't like Hitler, they need to be on the internet. Then turn around and lecture us about democracy. Give me a break. So the American people elected Trump to correct the balance and to right the wrongs of these perverted bureaucrats who abuse their positions of power and belong in jail.